You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where we talk all about content safety with my friend Sarah Bird. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show where we're talking all about content safety with my friend Sarah Bird. Sarah, it's good to have you back, my friend. How you doing?
I'm great. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. So we talked about content safety a lot at some of our conferences. So tell us what's new, what's going on, and maybe if you could explain what content safety is.
Yeah, so I've been on the show a lot over the years talking about responsible AI, meaning how do we make our own AI system safe? How do we empower others to make their AI systems safe? But one of the things I don't get to talk about as much, which is really embodied in this work, is the opportunities we see for AI helping make other things safe. Right. We've had just amazing breakthroughs in AI technologies over the last couple of years. I don't need to tell you, we're all, here very excited about generative AI.
Right.
But what we've seen in, my team is that that's also a huge opportunity to take those same technologies and look at how we can increase safety in the world. One of the challenges that we have right now is that there's, vast amounts of content out there, all sorts of information, which is great. I mean, that's the beauty and the power of the internet and different online platforms. But unfortunately, there's also like harmful, problematic content that, platforms and users don't want on there. And one of the challenges that we've seen over the years is that the content's very sophisticated, nuanced, language is very nuanced. And so traditional AI was just not great at it, right? It was like, okay, if there's, just one harmful word in here, it's going to get flagged and sent to a human reviewer. And so it was frankly just dumb. Well,
Yeah.
Turns out we've had a huge breakthrough in language models, right? And multimodal models that can understand so much more than that, and actually now look and really understand more. What is this sentence saying? What is this paragraph saying? Is it actually harmful? And so content safety is the outcome of several years of work to harness that technology and put it towards detecting harmful content. So it's a new cognitive service. It just GA'd 2 weeks ago. And the idea here is that it's going to be able to have different types of content flowing through it and score it with different categories you care about, like violence, hate, self-harm, etc.
And that's awesome because traditionally what we would have, and I come from the NLP world, traditionally what we used to do is we have a huge list of just bad words that we just searched for. And then someone would put like a 0 instead of an O, and we'd have to add that thing in there. And then and you're saying that we don't need to do that anymore with content safety. It's a much more intelligent way.
Yeah, certainly we've seen a huge leap forward. I mean, there are obviously with any of these, it's an adversarial game where people are going to figure out more clever techniques to get around these kind of filtering systems. But it's certainly a huge breakthrough in sophistication, and it I think greatly reduces the other side of it, which is also where you have people trying to use terms like in a positive sense, reclaim them, and being censored, right? And so we want to make sure that you're able to both like not be over filtering or under filtering. And so I think that's we've just seen kind of a huge step forward in that. And actually, I thought it was very fitting you started the show in French. I don't speak French. But these models are multilingual from the base also, which means that when the sentences are, mixing different types of languages, it still can understand that. And that just adds actually higher quality in every language, but then also going across languages. And so that's been another part of it, of course.
And that's interesting because I hadn't even considered the multilingual case, right? If you have to manage this thing yourself, you're going to be fighting this game a lot. And you're saying that now there's a service that we just optimize this thing all the time to make sure it's doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we start with the same foundation models that are powering other things. We start with like a great language model that's multilingual at the base, and then we train it on harmful content. And I'm, talking about language and text a lot here because we've all seen the breakthroughs, but the same applies to image, right? This is powered by our Florence image model, or, the newest area, which is actually really important, which is multimodal, where we're combining image and text, right? If you look at like a hateful meme, the text can actually be totally safe and the image can be totally safe safe, but the combination is problematic. And so the multimodal models are also really important in that. And so this step forward in foundation models, understanding content, has allowed us to build on top of those and understand very specifically different types of potentially problematic content.
And this is awesome because like every time you come on the show, I'm like, oh, that's another thing I should probably worry about. I was only thinking of like written content, and you're saying now image content as well is something that needs to be looked at, because someone might post a very bad thing in an image, and your text word search is not going to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course the combination, right? It's not just like, you can also have an image like that is, clearly violent or let's say clearly hateful, but then a lot of the memes are really that the combination is what's harmful, neither the text nor the image. So you need a model that actually understands the combination of the two. And so that's been a gap that we've always sort of had out in the world, and the new multimodal capabilities of foundation models are enabling us to do that better. And multimodal is not yet GA, it's in preview. That's like the sort of the latest work, but I'm just really excited where I think we can get to in the next couple of years with this technology. I think it's really going to be a game changer for safety.
And I've seen this in use primarily in the context of large language models, like when they're using generative large language models, filtering content on the way out and on the way in. That happens in Azure OpenAI. Are you saying that this is now something that can be standalone, used by itself?
Yeah, exactly. So when we first started working on the technology, the first place that we released it was in the generative AI applications as part of Azure OpenAI, because that was frankly, because it was needed, right? Because we had to be able to filter in real time at scale, which meant we needed a different type of technology. So we've quickly put this in there, and so you've been seeing it in Azure OpenAI, and we can look kind of more of a demo of that. But now we have it as a standalone system, which means that people can use it to look at also just user-generated content on their platform, but also open source LLMs, or if you're developing your own model, you can use it. So we wanted to make it easy for safety to just be wherever you are, and so having it as its own API means that you can bring it to where you need it. But of course, it's still integrated in Azure OpenAI so that it's just there and it's easy for you.
And that's interesting, using a content safety as a pseudo regularizer over your own training of models, which is kind of cool as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so what can you show us?
Yeah, so let's go and look first just at sort of the content safety portal here. So this is the studio for content safety. And as you can see, just as we were talking about, we have, we have the moderate text here. Can you see my cursor?
I sure can. It looks great.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so you can see the moderate text here. We talked about image. I mentioned that we have multimodal and preview, which is really exciting. I think in each of these, when you click through, we have different examples that you can look at so you can understand how it works. But trying to limit the amount of harmful content people look at. Let's stay with text today, because the images, you actually are kind of visually looking at that, which is problematic. And so one of the things that was really important is recognizing that like each application is different in terms of what type of content might be appropriate. But we also wanted to build a system that could power many, many applications, because it's taking like a lot of expertise, right? We work with expert linguists and fairness experts to label this data and train our models. We have pretty sophisticated AI scientists working on this. And so there's a lot of investment that we wanted to make sure is reusable, but recognize that the applications are different. And so the way we've been doing this behind the scenes is actually that we have different severity levels for the content that we've actually trained into the model. And so you can set the system to filter at for each of these different categories: low severity, medium severity, high severity. So if I was a gaming application, for example, I might want to allow more violent content through, but maybe not the worst of the worst, right? And so I would set that here, where an education application might choose to be much more strict and actually do that, and block everything that's even a low level of severity. So this system is allowing you to understand, depending on where you put that threshold, this playground, kind of where that was. And the example that we showed before, which I think is still a good one for our Contoso, outdoor commerce company, is asking about, I'm looking for an axe, which this has a weapon
Right.
to cut. So it has a problematic, it has a problematic verb here. And then we set a path in the forest, right? And let's hope our system here recognizes, right, this is safe. You're allowed to cut a path with an axe. And then, of course, if we switch this over and we say something much more problematic, but hopefully not, hopefully a little cartoony here, then we recognize like this is a medium level of violence in the way that it's said here. And so this is, this is kind of how this is working. And actually with the GA, we've added additional severity levels. So you can go up to 8 different severities, so you can get even more fine nuance in terms of what works for your application. And so this is kind of the system, in the most basic form. Now, of course, it's an API, and what you actually get out is a category and a score. So you could do something much more sophisticated. You could, for example, have all high severity content automatically filtered, and medium severity you could send to a human reviewer, for example, first to decide if it can be, used or posted or something. So there's a lot of different options with these. We're just showing kind of the most basic version here.
Here's a question I have for you. So, because I've looked at this a couple of times and sometimes I get confused. So, when it's on the low severity, that just means that the content that's going through has low scores for each of those categories. Is that right?
Yeah, it's saying that it's kind of, we're evolving some things. It's kind of here saying where it's going to start rejecting. And it's just letting you understand, like, if you set your application to reject starting low, it will reject everything low and higher, right? If you set it to go to medium, it will reject everything medium and higher. So it's giving you those, where you want your sort of cutoff point for what's appropriate for your application, like what type of level of content can you tolerate.
Got it. So it's almost like what is your tolerance for whatever content there is? Like, for example, in a video game, if you're playing like a video game that has people shooting, the violence tolerance for the speech is going to be much higher.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying? And so then you would set it to high or medium or whatever. This is awesome.
And if you're a medical application, then it might be very reasonable to have sexual content in there, right? And so we've seen like people who work in education are often setting everything the way it is on the screen right now, where everything is set to filter, even anything that might be just mildly risky, right? They want all of that filtered because it's working with students. And so this really is about, making sure this is a technology that can work in many different types of applications. And then, of course, putting the application owner in control because, they are going to know what is the right thing for their application.
I see. So when we're thinking about this, like, my sense is that this is like one piece of doing things correctly with AI.
Yeah.
Is that a good sense?
Yeah, and I think this is one part of even, let's say, in the digital safety or user-generated content. This is one part of the story where, as I was mentioning, how you take an action. For example, are you going to send it to a human review? Are you going to automatically filter? Are you going to potentially take action and like kick a user off the platform, right? This is just one piece, which is giving you more information about the content, right? You still have to sort of have that whole story. And then as you're alluding to here for generative AI, this is a super key piece, which is why it's integrated in Azure OpenAI and something we use in our Copilots. But this is a really key piece to our story, but it's just one part of that. And so if we can bring up that slide, this is, you can probably sort of animate it here. Basically, what we have found is that everything with this is a defense in depth. You need a layered system. And so the first 2 layers here in blue are our platform layers. And these we've just built right into Azure AI. We've built into the Azure OpenAI system, which is first having safety built into the model. And safety built into the model allows the model, right? These are the most powerful models available, allows the model to look at that content and decide how to respond appropriately, whether that's actually responding or, for example, refusing to respond. But the model makes mistakes, right? Sometimes it just gets it wrong, but also it's open to jailbreaks or things. And so this is the second piece, right? The safety system, which is this independent AI system that's looking and saying, whoa, 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 I don't know why, but you seem to be producing harmful content. Let's like block that in real time. Or of course, if the user is, trying to actually engage in the AI system in a way we don't want it to do. And so I found that people are actually, I mean, it's a pretty complex stack. People are sometimes kind of confused about these different pieces and how they work together. So I wanted to maybe jump over and look at the Azure OpenAI Studio and kind of show the two pieces working.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so let me switch over here. So here's the, our great playground. And if I say, how do I hide a bomb in a school, then this should see, so the safety system recognizes, right, we're talking about bomb in a school. If I say, how do I bomb a school, it will actually come out high on violence because it's, kind of a more violent action. So this is easy, right? This is violence, like the external safety system understands that. Now, if I ask it instead, so it's like we don't even let the model respond. It's just like, no, we don't need to do this. The model itself would probably also know how to refuse this particular example, but it's easier to just also have the safety system in not even allowing these things to kind of get to the model. But then here we have how do I commit. Also, whoever, no one is looking, but if people are looking at the playground here, they're like, what is Sarah doing all the time?
We are testing the safety system, everybody.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
want a fair warning. We
So
are testing the safety system.
If I ask how to commit tax fraud, right, so that is a crime. I'm not asking how to commit fraud specifically, but it's not sort of violence or one of these like content categories. But we have used RLHF with OpenAI to ensure that the model doesn't sort of help people commit crimes. So when you see this response, I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request, that's actually the model knowing that it doesn't want to respond to this, even though the content itself wasn't necessarily harmful, but it's aiding in sort of a harmful activity. And so the different systems are better at different things, and so we can use them kind of in tandem so that we get kind of the most robust safety there.
I see. And so that's where we go back to the layers. The model itself is awesome at detecting some things, but the nuance, we have other models around protecting the safety section for the safety system, for example, to help with that. Is that what you're going at?
Yeah, and so for example, the model, the model is looking at like the user history and things and saying what's an appropriate response there. And so that's sometimes where it might think in context what it's saying is appropriate, where the safety system would just look and say, whoa, 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 that's a violent statement. We don't ever want that regardless of the context, right? So it's giving you kind of a check and balance with this. But then the model, is obviously, I think I'm using 3.5 turbo here. If I was using 4, right, it's incredibly powerful. So we want to use the model for safety because it does understand so much and it can take that history into account. And so there's lots of things where we'll see the model will either know to refuse or better yet, know how to respond appropriately, because it's even better if it doesn't have to refuse or it doesn't get blocked. But in the cases where it slips up, that's where the safety system, can come into play, so that you know that you're still going to get, you're going to have safety even if the model doesn't quite do the right thing.
And I love this safety system, but when it comes to your application, there's still safety that's just beyond those 5 categories, for example, that relate to the applications you're building. And so that's where we get to meta prompt and grounding, and then user experience as well. Could you say a word or two about those things?
Yeah, exactly. And so these 2 layers that I was just showing you are the platform layers. We've built them to work with a variety of applications. And then the 2 layers on top, the meta prompt and the grounding and the user experience, that's what the application developer is developing. And so the meta prompt, I think people still underestimate how important and how valuable this is for safety, where we see so many meta prompts that people are showing us that are like, hey, can you give us some feedback? And the safety section or the response-wise section is just very small, right? And this is your chance now. These systems can take pretty large prompts. This is your chance to get really detailed instructions on kind of how you want the system to behave in different circumstances and things. And it makes a huge difference in how it actually behaves in practice, right? So this is like the first thing you want to do if you don't like the way the system is behaving is, adjust the meta prompt. And that's actually where our tools like, prompt flow are so great now, because you can go and evaluate these meta prompts side by side and actually see, like, if I change this, am I getting the outcome I want? But that's just like a hugely important part of the story. And that's where you really tailor it to your application, right? You're going to want to behave very differently in each of these contexts. And so the meta prompt is what's really trying to get it to work well in each of those cases. And then the sort of built-in safety in the model and the safety system are for, when things don't go quite as planned.
And then the last part, and this is the part that I think a lot of us kind of forget, because we're like, I'm going to prompt engineer this, and then I have my safety system, and the model's going to be awesome, so everything's perfect. I think people sometimes forget about the user experience. We've got to do some stuff about, like, maybe disclosing that this is AI generated minimally, right? Or what other things should we be doing?
Yeah, and I think we've got some examples in our hacks toolkit, which is where we put sort of our best user experience best practices. But absolutely, one of the things is what we call our systems Copilot for a reason. They're supposed to be designed to work with a human, and humans are great at certain things, and these systems are great at other things. And so if you can co-design with the user in mind, then like it can be so much more powerful. Where the best example of this is like GitHub Copilot, the original, now I guess the classic version, right?
Oh,
but
geez.
even though it's made some mistakes, the users could accept the suggestion or not. They can edit the suggestion, and so the developer was still very much in control and could send that still through all their normal testing and security processes and things. And so it just helped developers go faster. Like, oh, I don't want to type all that, or if you give me an idea to start, it's a lot easier. And we've seen obviously developers just love it, even though it's not perfect, right? It does make some mistakes, and that's a case where it's just like very nicely designed to work well with how those users work. One of the challenges we've seen, though, is basically one of the magical things about this technology is it enables users to do things they couldn't do before, right? You can generate code even though you don't code. And so, but the systems still make mistakes. And so one of the things we're very much looking for is how do we sort of avoid this risk of over-reliance, where you're relying on the system to do something that it doesn't do perfectly, and you're not really able to compensate. Because like human in a loop is a great pattern if the user is actually able to fix the mistakes. But if the user can't even tell it's making a mistake, then that's a big problem. And so we're still, each application is a little bit different with that, but that's like definitely one of the things we're seeing, people really need to watch out for, is that now you can have this tool that allows you to do something you never could do, and then how do you have oversight over that? And so that's where like really making sure we're developing it with the user in mind is so important to understand. Like, is the user going to have oversight, or do we need to make sure it doesn't make mistakes? Do we need another system having oversight because the user isn't going to be equipped to do it? And so there's a lot there, and it's a really important part of the story.
Well, all of this is amazing. I love what AI is doing and transforming how we're doing work, and I love that we're doing it. We're trying to do it, at least at Microsoft, in a safe way, and giving people the tools to do that. So, where can people go to find out more, Sarah?
Well, you can go play around in the playground. I mean, honestly, I think any of this technology, just like actually using it is the most important thing. You get a feel for it. And as I said, I only demoed the text because it's a little easier to look at harmful content. But I really recommend checking out images and multimodal and understanding what it can do there. So you can go just check out in the studio, start getting a feel for it. Obviously, you're already using it if you're using Azure OpenAI, and you'll start seeing more of those features and controls kind of coming through there. We also have a great ebook that I think talks more about some of the things I was talking about, of how this can change digital safety and enable kind of a new tool in the toolkit, which is something we're always looking for safety. So I would recommend getting started there. And then if you want to hear more about the responsible AI layers and rings, we have all of that in the Azure OpenAI documentation, and so you can see there, and we'll keep bringing out more as we're learning.
Fantastic. And there's a blog too, from what I understand, a safety
Yeah.
blog that talks about the GA.
Yeah,
We'll kind of put down there.
it's been a lot. It's been a labor of love for me and kind of a long journey to getting to this GA. In terms of when we first had the ideas that we can do better with these kind of models to where we are now in the GA. But I'm so excited about that. Definitely check out the blog, and it's such an important milestone because now you can go use it in production, right? And so you have no excuse to not have safety everywhere at this point because
That's right.
we've made it easy. It's an API. You just plug it in.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Sarah. And thank you, my friends, so much for watching. We're learning all about content safety with Sarah Bird. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.